wrong button. Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. First of all, we'll have an emergency evacuation announcement. Should we be required to evacuate the building, would you please leave the building via the nearest available exit to the chamber? Our assembly point will be in the public car park at the side of the Civic Suite. Please do not delay your evacuation to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by council staff. Please note that this meeting is audio recorded. May I ask you all to turn off your telephones or put them onto silent? Thank you. Good morning. My name is Councillor Arthur Williams. I'm chairman of the committee this morning. The other members are, I would like to introduce you to, on my far right. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Councillor Dave Sperring.
Thank you, and I'm Councillor Jo McPherson.
Thank you very much. To receive any declarations of interest, please. Sorry, first of all, I do apologise. The committee legal advisor is Mr. Chris Irwin. Thank you. I apologise. To receive any declarations of interest.
Mr. Chairman, just to make you aware that as part of the consultation process, Rochester District Council are one of the responsible authorities that can agree conditions or propose conditions. I'd like to bring to your attention on the Appendix 3.1, Condition 8 and 9 has been proposed by Rochester District Council from the licensing team, just to bring it to your attention. As I said, it's not an agreed condition. Obviously, they're open to yourselves to decide whether they are suitable or not, but they certainly were ones that we have consulted with the applicant.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any other declarations of interest? Thank you. The committee will follow the procedure set out in the procedural note on item 3 of the agenda. The purpose of today's hearing is to determine an application for premises licence as detailed in the report. Please could the applicants introduce themselves?
Robert Cruikshank, I'm the Director of Apton Hall Events Limited.
Thank you.
And
Charlotte Offord, resident.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any witnesses that you wish to call?
oh, sorry, that is Charlotte.
That is Charlotte.
Sorry, Charlotte is the witness.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Could the council's licensing officer please introduce himself?
Good morning. I'm Stephen Greener. I'm the Rochester Council licensing officer.
Thank you, Stephen. Could the premises licence holder please introduce themselves? You're one and the same.
Yeah, I'm one and the same. Yeah, Robert Cruikshank again, Director of Apton Hall Events Limited.
Okay, that is right. Thank you. Okay. And the other interested parties, could we have your... Sorry.
Robert Saints, registered.
Thank you very much. Are there any responsible authorities present? I don't think there are there? I don't think we have any responsible authorities present. No. Do you have any witnesses that you wish to call?
No, sir.
Thank you. Each party will be given a maximum of 15 minutes to present their submissions. All parties who make representations will be given 2 minutes to make a closing statement at the end of the hearing. Time limits will only be extended with the permission of the subcommittee. Please could Mr. Greener summarise the application?
Good morning again. This is a report that introduces an application for the grant of a premises licence made under Section 17 of the Licensing Act. The application must be determined within 5 working days of the conclusion of the hearing, in accordance with paragraph 26 of the Licensing Act 2003, Hearings Regulations 2005. This application is submitted to the licensing authority by the applicant, Apton Hall Events Limited, and refers to the premises that is known as Apton Hall Road, Rochard, Essex. Appendix A, which has been provided to you, is a copy of the original application that was submitted at the time. The premises to which the application relates comprise of a wedding and function venue with overnight accommodation for bed and breakfast, and the premises is located in a quiet area of Rochard. And we've also included in Appendix B a map to help you actually identify where the location is. The application is for the following licensable activities and the times. It is all exactly the same Monday to Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. the following day, for the sale of alcohol on and off the premises, provision of plays, provisions of films, provisions of live music, provisions of recorded music, performance of dance, and finally provisions of late night refreshment that does actually start from 2300, so it starts from 11 o'clock at night until 2 o'clock the following morning. That's the only difference. They have also asked for a seasonal variation as well in relation to New Year's Eve, Valentine's Day, Halloween, Christmas Eve, and all Fridays and Saturdays on bank holidays to extend the licensable activities for an additional hour. The application was made in accordance with Section 17 and Schedule 8, Part 1 and Paragraph 7 of the Licensing Act and the Licensing Act 2003, Premises Licence and Club Certificates Regulations 2005. Prior to the application being submitted, the applicants have already previously submitted 11 temporary event applications, which is basically temporary licences, and they were sent to Essex Police and the Environmental Health Team, and neither of them have made any representations against any of the 11 applications. The application has been assessed by Environmental Health, and they have not made any representation. Essex Police and Rochester District Council have agreed conditions with the applicant should you feel that these are appropriate and to be granted. Appendix C, as I mentioned earlier, are a copy of the conditions that have been proposed by ourselves and Essex Police. There has been one representation received from a local resident, and the representation raised concerns in relation to the following licensing objectives, which is crime and disorder and public nuisance. And a copy of the representation again was within the bundle under Appendix D. All parties involved have been served with relevant notices and documentation required by paragraphs 6 and 7 of the Licensing Act Hearing Regulations 2005. The notices and documentation included an explanation of the rights of the persons to attend the hearing and to be represented and to give evidence and to call witnesses. Paragraphs 8 and 9 of the regulations require that parties notify the licensing authority no later than 5 working days before the hearing of those matters mentioned in paragraph 5.1, and a pro forma was signed by both parties and presented to us. The following options are available to the members: to grant the application subject to such conditions that are consistent with the operating schedule, modify to such extent as members consider necessary for promoting the licensing objectives, and any mandatory conditions that must be included. To exclude from the scope of the licence any licensable activities which the applicant relates. To reject the application. And finally, subject to paragraphs 11 to 13 of the Licensing Act 2003 Hearings Regulation 2005, to adjourn the hearing to a specified date or arrange for a hearing to be held on specified additional dates where members consider it necessary for the consideration of any representations. Under a quality impact assessment, there has been found no impacts, either positive or negative, on protected groups as defined under the Equalities Act. And the recommendation is for the subcommittee to resolve the application. And that's the end of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Greener. Thank you. Could the premises licence holder present any submissions that they may have, please? Oh, I thought we did that afterwards, sorry. Before we do that, we'll just ask the committee if we have any questions for Mr. Greener.
No, Chairman, I don't.
No, thank you, Chairman.
No, thank you, sorry. Yeah, could the premises licence holder and the applicant present any submissions they may have, please? Oh, sorry, yeah. Do you have any questions for Mr. Greener?
No, I don't.
Thank you. And to the
Oh,
objector.
sorry.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Greener at the moment?
No, sir.
Thank you.
No, sir.
That's all right. Thank you.
Good morning. Just some history on the background of Apton Hall. It's a family-run business. The Squires, who are the owners of Apton Hall, contacted me, or by mutual friends, because they always knew that they didn't want to run the business themselves because they don't have the experience to run a high-end venue, and that's what we was looking to achieve with Apton Hall. My background as an operator is 25 years, or in excess of 25 years now, of event and venue management, both in the UK and in Europe. Both myself and my team has always set high standards and quality of service at all time, and we continue to grow the team with training and continued advancement. The build of Apton Hall took 3 to 4 years due to the fact that we wanted to create a high-end venue that fit really well into the local market, and it can be something that Rochford can be proud of. And it was certainly something that we felt as a team that was missing in the local area. The investment has been quite considerable to make it a high-end venue, and we've not underspent on stuff like soundproofing in the main area to make sure that the local residents aren't affected. We've had ongoing discussions with local residents from the planning application process straight through to utilising the temporary events notices. As Stephen mentioned, the police and environmental health have not needed to come down to the site at any stage. We've followed all the licensing guidelines. As I mentioned, we've kept an open dialogue with all the neighbours. And if there has been any issues, we've dealt with them straight away. I would say there's probably 7 local neighbours that are within the sound barrier, shall we say, of the actual venue itself. And none of those have felt the need to come and make a representation. And in fact, 2 of those local residents actually went against the planning application initially. And my aim was to prove that within using the temporary events notices that they didn't have any concerns, and they've actually turned their decision round to actually endorse the venue now rather than be against it when the planning application went through. As I said, we've not had any complaints from the environmental health or the police. We do have processes that we send managers down to the bottom of the chase to make sure that there's no patrons at the bottom of the chase, and we contain them in the courtyard. We also have a policy with our taxi partners where they only pick up in the courtyard. It had happened on 1 or 2 occasions on maybe the first or second event that unfortunately someone was picked up at the bottom, but we've rectified that now, and ever since then that doesn't happen anymore. The local taxi company is Andrews. They have strict instructions not to flash their lights when entering the venue or to sound the horn, and to only pick up guests inside the courtyard and not on the roadside. We also have a system in place, which I believe we are the first venue within the Rochford district to have an IVR system, which basically facilitates us to go to the top of any taxi phone calls that are made locally. So basically it means that we can get people off site as quick and as efficiently as possible during the evening and once the evening is finished as well. Going back to the high-end venue, we are a wedding venue. We consider ourselves as a wedding venue. We've never looked at us as a nightclub or anything like that. The process of the day, or the stages of the day, is very food orientated. So therefore, it's not somewhere that people just go and drink and drink and drink. There is a lot of food on site, which keeps down any boisterous attitude, should we say. I have got one witness here with me today, Charlotte Offord, and she is one of the closest neighbours to the venue. I don't know if I can ask Charlotte to speak now. Is that possible?
Yeah, that will be fine. Just give me a second, sorry. I think first of all, does the committee have to ask any questions first? If have you finished your submission?
Yeah, that's
If we could just ask if any of the committee members have any questions for you
absolutely.
before
Yeah.
we'll listen to your witness.
Okay.
Councillor.
No, I must be honest, I was quite impressed if you've got this arrangement with the taxi company to pick up within the confines, and it should, on that basis, eliminate some of Mr Saint's concerns of picking up at the junction. I mean, that's something that you say is quite initiative, and to be complimented. Apart from that, I think a couple of issues that Mr Saints has raised we'll discuss later in the hearing.
Okay.
Okay. No,
Thank
that's
you.
about it, Chair.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank
You have to turn your-
Oh, sorry. I'm not getting good at this.
you. We're no good at it either, don't worry. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, in the recommendations for approval, it's got about the taxi private hire booking service, so you would have to comply with that anyway. Which again, as Councillor Sperrin mentioned, addresses some of the objectors' concerns. What I would like to know is, taxis aren't the only way that these people are going to be picked up. They'll be picked up, I would, by my son, for example, if I was going. So what notifications are given to your customers that pickup is from the courtyard and not from the exit? Thank you.
We've actually got a sign by the car park that actually says pick-up point, which points in the direction of the courtyard itself. We also highlight in advance to the bride and groom to let them know that the courtyard is the only pick-up point when people come. There is also minibuses that turn up because we've also got a partnership with Holiday Inn, so there's quite a few shuttle runs for people staying at the Holiday Inn as well. And also in terms of families picking up for disabled or anyone like that, they actually pick up in the courtyard. So everything is driven prior to the event, prior to the weddings, and on the day of the weddings to the courtyard. That is the pick-up point. Because in the courtyard is obviously shelter of the buildings as well, so it alleviates any noise problems.
There we go. Just following on from that, with your staff, you mentioned that you send some down there. Would it be an idea, therefore, if you've got a large event, to have somebody there, as cars pull up, they actually are waving them into the courtyard and also stopping people from going down to the edge of the road to be picked up?
Absolutely, and that's something we actually, again, with the scoring matrix of each event, we determine how many people are coming to that event and how many staff we need on site to actually say, okay, this one's going to be quite a few cars coming, therefore we'll have a car park attendant who stays on site until people leave. And the management structure of actually walking down to the bottom of the chase, or the actual entrance, was more determined on noise pollution as well. So, but the actual staffing levels are maintained throughout the day to make sure nobody does walk down to the chase. You know, on occasions, one or two people do slip the net, but we are on it straight away to go down there and bring them back up to the courtyard.
I have a couple of questions. IVR, what does that stand for the taxi?
I'm glad you asked me that. Yeah, it's basically a system that, I'm not very technical, so I do apologise with this, and I don't know what IVR stands for, if I'm honest.
Okay,
but basically, the system is that we have 3 different mobile phones that basically go through to their switchboard, i.e. Andrews and AC Taxis, and then the switchboard recognises our mobile number and it gives them priority. Yeah. So that goes straight to the top of the list. And as I said, we are the only venue in Rochford currently that actually has that facility in place.
Okay. I drove past a couple of days ago to have a look around before we came here today. There are a couple of lodges. There are a pair of lodges at either side of the chase, I believe. Are they occupied?
Yes, one's occupied by Mr. Saints, and the opposite one's occupied by Melanie Hall. She's actually sent me a letter because she couldn't come due to ill health, but basically she has no representations against it either.
Are they going to be maintained as residential premises?
You would have to ask the squires for that because
Okay.
I don't have any. It's not part of my venue. So
Okay. There was another. Is it all right at the moment to ask about the other issues? Yeah, well, one of the other issues I have is regarding the late night refreshments, I believe it is. When you say late night refreshments, you're asking for that to finish at 2 o'clock. Is that right?
that's correct. That's only for specific events. Most weddings will be 12 midday up till 12 midnight.
But with on that, you're asking for it to be extended to for an hour on specific occasions.
Yeah, so those specific occasions will be New Year's Eve, specific VIP events. Should we have anything like that?
So that's potentially 3 in the morning.
Oh no, it would only it was 1 o'clock with an extra hour, so it would be 2 o'clock, but it wouldn't be 3 o'clock.
Okay, on the application it does actually ask that that finishes an hour after, as far as I'm aware. Is that correct? It's on I. State any seasonal variations for the provision of late night refreshment. Valentine's Day extended by an hour, so that would be that would include the hour. Sorry.
Yeah, 2 o'clock, please.
Yeah, okay. So that's on page 1.17.
Yeah.
So you've got it here as 2 o'clock. So that would not be going on until 3 in the morning, or
No, it wouldn't. No, 2 o'clock is sufficient.
so if yeah, that includes the extra hour. So if that was to be brought into conditions, that wouldn't be an issue at all.
No, not at all.
Thank you very much. Right, thank you for that. I don't believe I have. Have you had any complaints up till now from residents?
No complaints from residents and no complaints from police or environmental health.
Fine, thank you. No, yeah. The other, yeah, there was one other issue. What do you plan on having? I know that a friend is coming there next week for a wake. Do you plan on doing any other types of events there? For instance, raves.
Absolutely not.
Great.
My background used to be stuff like that, and I've now got my own family, and I couldn't think of anything worse. Hence, one of the reasons I moved out here. And really, this is a progression of what my professional background is. So, weddings are the sole business, really.
So, and birthday parties, things like that? Would you do? Is that going to be considered?
No, not birthday parties. Don't want to do any birthday parties. To be honest, the venue, the way we structured the venue and designed the venue, it's heavily based around a 3-course meal with entertainment. And to be frank, that is what the venue will be driven with as a business. You mentioned wakes. We've actually got a wake next week. Again, food and drink as such, but we will not be entertaining any events that are just solely drink driven, because it goes back to what I said. It's not a nightclub, and that's not what we want. We want longevity for the venue. We believe there is a gap in the market for a wedding venue, a high-end wedding venue, and today, with the success of the sales, I don't think we will need to entertain any birthday parties or the like.
What brings that to mind is places like the Lawns, for instance, have wedding days, all sorts of other things going on there. to be fair, they're generally during the day. They're not in, and things like classic car shows. You don't have any intentions of running anything like that.
I think the success of Apton Hall today, in terms of sales, there's no need for us to do that, and it's not really a place that would work to do those car shows, etc. Because we're limited with the area that we've got. So there certainly wouldn't be any need to do any big shows outside of the venue itself. The core venue and the core business is based around the courtyard buildings.
Yeah.
So we've never really felt the need to do anything on the paddock or anywhere else. And again, being a wedding venue, you want to try and keep the greenery and landscape of a high level, and something of that ilk would probably be detrimental against the core business, which is obviously the wedding business.
Yeah. You have a barrier at the end of the chase, is it? I think is that going to remain down at most times, or will people be able to enter, or is there an intercom there?
The idea is that, again, with budgets next year, we've budgeted to be able to bring the entrance forward to where the actual lodges are, and the new gate will actually be a disappearing gate into the ground, and that will also have intercom and additional CCTV on that.
Excellent. And will that have any impact on the view of the road leaving the premises?
No, it's set back far enough.
Thank you very much. That's all I need to ask. Do any other parties have any questions? Yes. It's not at the moment. No, thank you very much. Could the interested party present any submissions that they may have? This is your turn. Sorry. Yeah, I do apologise. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that'd be lovely.
I'd just like...
No, sorry, you don't have to stand, that's fine.
Oh, right. I was just going to introduce Charlotte Offord.
Charlotte, yeah.
She's one of the local residents, literally probably 10 metres from the entrance of Apton Hall, if that.
Is that the
less than
paddocks?
No.
Windmill.
Windmill Cottage.
Windmill
Okay.
Cottage.
You don't have to stand if you're not comfortable.
So we're in Windmill Cottage, which is almost dead opposite the entrance to Apton Hall. We did initially put in an objection when the planning first went in for the wedding venue, purely simply because we were concerned, one, of the noise, and secondly, where vehicles were leaving the premises, they almost point directly into the front of our property. From that objection, Apton Hall were very good in listening to all of our comments, all through the planning process of the building. We had regular meetings, regular visits with them, discussions about how to keep things so that it didn't impact on our lives. And before the venue was even opened, we were invited to a sound check, whereby we all started at the end of the chase and walked up to the venue, and until we actually entered the archway of the courtyard, we could not hear any noise from the sound systems at the venue. When we opened the doors, I couldn't believe that we couldn't hear anything down the lane. The DJ had actually put it on the loudest possible settings of the systems for us to be able to tell the difference. We couldn't hear anything. Since the actual events have started taking place, to be honest, the only way we've known is because after every event, Rob's knocked on our door to make sure there was no problems. We weren't disturbed. We didn't have any issues that it needed to be brought to his attention. I've not noticed any cars really coming in and out the driveway. Obviously, you notice them because you see the wedding cars going, but if I wasn't so nosy, I probably wouldn't see them. I've certainly not heard any loud noises. I actually hear more from the Garrans events than what I do from Apton Hall. I've not noticed any people loitering. We've certainly not been disturbed at all by the wedding venue. And myself and my husband have no objections to the venue itself or the premises being granted its licence.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Most helpful. Could the interested party present any submissions they may have? That's Mr. Saints, I believe. We have one letter of objection. It was, as there is no address on it, I believe this was yours. And you live in one of the lodges at the end of the chase.
I live directly next door. I'm the first neighbour next to the venue.
Thank you. But that's, how far away would you say?
From the venue, at the end of the driveway, but I'm their first neighbour.
Yeah. A couple of 100 yards? Maybe
I'm
more?
not very good at numbers,
Okay.
distances. But I'm the first person, I'm the first house
Yes.
that you need to be connected to before Charlotte's or Mrs. Hall's. I'm the first neighbour.
You're actually one of the lodges.
I am the lodger.
Yes.
As you come in,
Yes.
I'm the first one. It's marked on the map, but it's sort of disingenuous. It's not actually marked down that this is West Lodge, but that's where I live. It's
Okay.
kind of been
Okay,
arranged.
Thank you for that. Right, if you'd like to make any submissions that you...
Absolutely, I would. Good morning. Thank you for your time. Councillors, I resided at Apton Hall for 4 years this December. In 2015, renovation began and is continued at this very moment in time. During this period of time, I have had no discussions with Apton Hall events regarding their venue or venture. I live in the gatehouse that is at the entrance of Apton Hall events. I'm their closest neighbour, as is indicated on the map. I am directly and continually impacted by the events held there. In Mr. Lockton's declaration, he states that he has had dialogue with the neighbours, positive feedback and a visit and ongoing dialogue with them. This has not happened in the instance with me as the first neighbour, not once. I have seen no evidence of security nor security implementation. I have witnessed vile, drunken and drug-induced behaviour. I have witnessed public exposure and public indecency. It has only been recently that Apton Hall signage has been on display. Prior to this, many visitors would knock on my door and ask for directions or clarifications as to where Apton Hall actually is. This is upsetting. It can upset well-being and magnifies anxieties. They do have an electronic gate, which, only in the past fortnight or so, has displayed a phone number to call for the code to enter Apton Hall events. Up until now, the gate stays shut and visitors must queue and back up towards the main road, which is a 60 miles an hour road. This is potentially dangerous and shows a lack of care and respect of their guests. This is still ongoing as recently as Wednesday evening. Since the signage has been in place, Apton Hall has now become a named meeting place where all manners of nefarious characters meet, congregate and conduct business directly outside the front of my residence. The road, as I aforementioned, is 60 miles an hour. The entrance to Apton Hall is rather concealed, but the exit is extremely dangerous to the unknowing. The exit from Apton Hall onto Apton Hall Road is perilous, especially if you do not know the whereabouts of the road, and I truly have daily fear of a serious accident occurring unless steps are taken to address this dangerous issue. And again, it shows a lack of respect and understanding towards the guests and the wider community. As it states in the licensing declaration, the area is a quiet part of Rochford. That is the reason for me to live here. I have no issue with the current licence, but I have seen no evidence that would justify this further extension. Up until now, I have not witnessed behaviour or conduct which could justify this licence application being granted. Apton Hall Events has shown a great lack of professionalism. I have been involved for over 35 years in events management, and I would not recommend this company, nor endorse it, nor warrant this extended licence. It is clear that the idea sold of Apton Hall has sadly not come to fruition, and therefore the company is attempting to deviate and rebrand from a wedding venture and re-emerge as a new creature entirely with an extended 2 AM licence. This has been extremely detrimental to my health and well-being. I have seen 2 families moved on in the interest of transparency. I too am being currently threatened with eviction and homelessness so that the gatehouse I reside in can be converted into an office for Apton Hall events. I suffer from Crohn's disease and a depressive episode. I have been bullied, harassed, victimised and slandered, even to the point of sourcing my 80-year-old parents' address and hand-delivering a complaint about me to them the day after I made my representation. It was a farm that was also a building site and a failing Winterview that now needs to become function as a 7-day extended and 2 AM licence. The day after my name was released as the individual maker representative, and while suffering from an acute attack of Crohn's disease, I was harassed from 10 till 10:15 by continual banging and knocking on the front door, front and side windows to rouse me, which is an obviously correlation and further bullying, victimisation of a sick man with a lifelong condition. As I say, I have no objection to the temporary licence and indeed would be happy to see it continue. I do respectfully ask, though, and request that this further extended licence is denied. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillors, do you have any questions for this gentleman? It's yours off.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we're a go. Thank you, Mr. Saints. First of all, I'm very sorry to hear about your poor health. Unfortunately, this is also a licensing meeting, so we can only take in licensing issues. So one thing I will address, you mentioned the exit being perilous. That, again, is not a licensing issue. I'm afraid that's a highways issue. I will hopefully go back to the applicant and query, because you're saying you have not had Mr. Cruikshank visit you or converse with you? Okay. Now, a couple of issues. You said that you've seen drug-induced behaviour. How do you know that that was drug-induced behaviour?
I am from a background, probably similar to Mr. Cruikshank, so knows how people behave at nightclubs or parties and how sometimes they deviate away and do drugs publicly. Not only that, I've had patrons of the venue only last weekend telling me about how good it was to do drugs there.
Right, and taking in your experience and how important this is, especially around events, you will have reported this to the police?
I would have, if I had dialogue with the Squires or Mr. Cruikshank or his partner, Mr. Loxton, I would have addressed it.
Okay.
But they've shown me no, they don't talk to me.
I'm ever so sorry, Mr. Saints, there is one thing that I do have concerns of. If you witness and you know that there's drug-induced behaviour or drug being dealt at all, that is a police matter.
Yes, I know.
And you're saying none of these have been reported to the police?
I have spoken to the police and I have incident numbers.
Regarding this, because we have had 11 apparently events held there with no reports from the police at all.
Well, to be perfectly honest, Councillor, I'm the first person in line that would see it. I would see the people coming from the vent, they come straight down the driveway, past my house, past my window, either. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's not drink-induced or drug-induced, but public exposure is offensive either way, is it not?
It is, Mr. Saints, and you're telling me that you're experienced in events and would know how important that is to report to the police, yes. And yet we have representation from the police on the last 11 events that there have been no reports.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No, it's okay, Chairman. Councillor McPherson has covered the very points that I was going to raise.
Okay, thank you. The exposure, was that to urinate, I presume?
It was a gentleman walking along, urinating, yes.
And this was on
site.
On the site itself?
Yeah, coming from the events hall downwards. It started with dogs barking and that drew my attention, and then I saw this chap coming down and then patrons came out and screaming and shouting. It was an altercation. They managed to get me back in after lots and lots of shouting and screaming, but at the same I saw no security. And, you know, it's not really for me to sort of ring up the police straight away because I know how tightly budgets are for policing matters. I thought this could have been held, probably dealt with a little bit decently beforehand. And the reason I've had to come here today is to address it because there has been no dialogue. I've been completely negated with any discussion or any decency whatsoever.
Okay, we'll ask the applicant to come back on that one. What's that say? Yeah, just to, if you do have an issue, it is important that you report this to 101 or online. Otherwise, the police don't know there's an issue.
I was a champion for this venue when it started. I showed no objection, as indeed did my fellow tenants who have subsequently been made homeless and been moved on at the quest of opening this, wedding venue.
This venue. I presume from what you're saying is that you are a tenant of the Squires.
Absolutely.
That's correct. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. First, all right, do it. I'd like to ask the applicant now if you'd like to ask any questions of our objector.
You mentioned in your evidence that people have been knocking on your door. I've been personally trying to knock on your door for quite some time, of which you've never answered. There was absolutely no reason for me to go to 6 other neighbours and then not include you into it. There is no personal vendetta against you. It would just not make any business sense to not include you. So I have been to your premises on numerous occasions, knocked on the door, and you've not answered your door. Whether that's down to your illness, I don't know, but attempts have been made on several occasions to include you to the process of keeping the neighbours on side.
Can I just ask that this is for questions to the objector, not to make a statement at this stage?
Okay. Then I have no questions.
Thank you so much. Does the premises licence holder, the applicant, have any closing statements they would like to make?
Do you mind if I stand?
No, that's
Okay.
fine.
This is probably the 12th or 13th venue I've opened over a history of 25 plus years. There is always a process to gaining the neighbours' approval for the longevity of any venue. The processes and protocols that we've put in place have made it easier for the local neighbours to come on board. I'm very amazed and quite frankly bewildered that Mr. Saints has given this evidence when there's nobody else representing from 6 or 7 other neighbours. I'm unaware of anyone that's moved due to the fact that Apton Hall was being built. I have neighbours who have turned round and changed their attitude towards the venue based on going against the planning. I think that's proven. As far as moving forward, we will continue to improve. I will make sure my team does additional training. We will not stop trying to improve the team and the way we conduct business. I don't agree at all with Mr. Saints' representation. And as I've said before, if it was as severe, then there would be other neighbours here representing as well as Mr. Saints.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Saints, do you have a closing statement that you'd like to make?
Indeed, I do. In answer to Mr. Crookshank, the neighbours who haven't complained are directly opposite the aforementioned Mrs. Hall. Her husband has a vested interest within working for the events management. He does lawn mowing within the Squires. Whether or not he's directly working for Apton Hall events, but he does work within the Squires. I also know a number of neighbours that who they have gone over and tried to curry favour with them. And I'm quite surprised that they managed to get Charlotte here today. However, Charlotte does not live right, she lives across the road from there, but I live directly there. And also, and I don't mean to speak out of terms, the aforementioned lady has a severe alcoholic problem. So she, and I don't want to highlight that or anything like that, but so she may not be able to see at
I
certain
really don't
times.
think we should go down. That's a hearsay. We can't go on.
Okay, that's not a problem at all. However, I am the direct neighbour. If Mr. Cruikshank could not get me by banging on my door, as he said, he could have written me, could have left a note. There are many ways to get in touch with me, not just by banging on the door. The fact that I've had to come here today to have this discussion is because Mr. Cruikshank and Mr. Loxton have adhered in their responsibility as patrons of a venue.
Okay.
They've tried to circumvent a tenant.
Thank you very much for
Thank
that.
you.
On conclusion of this, sorry. Of course, no, he doesn't. Just to ask if Mr. Greener would like any input on this point.
I'm not supposed to obviously sort of say anything at the end, but something that might actually help you around late night refreshments. Obviously, when I was talking to the applicant around the application in relation to late night refreshments from their hours, they have got bed and breakfast facilities on site, and sometimes there may be members of the family that might want a tea or coffee after the end of the party to actually take back to their room, and that's why they certainly talked about the late night refreshment in the actual rooms. So that may be something for you to consider.
But if there were facilities in the rooms, that wouldn't need a licence, I
That
presume.
falls under late night refreshments.
That would fall under late night refreshment. Thank you. Anything else? No?
No, thank you, Chairman.
On conclusion of the evidence, the committee will now adjourn to consider the case. We will return shortly to announce the decision. This will also be sent to you in writing. You do not have to wait, but you are welcome to do so if you wish. And thank you all for attending. Thank you. Sorry? Yeah, right. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Ready? Thank you for waiting. Right. The committee has considered all the written evidence and the representations made at the hearing today. The committee has also carefully considered the concerns raised by the interested party relating to the licensing objective. To the licensing objectives of the prevention of crime and disorder, the prevention of public nuisance. There have been no representations from Essex Police or Environmental Health in respect of this application. Representations have been made from the applicant, including evidence from a witness who lives opposite the venue and the interested party. The interested party has not provided any evidence to support his submissions regarding crime and disorder and public nuisance. We note that there has been no objection from Essex Police. We are aware from the evidence that 11 temporary event notices have taken place at this venue, and no reported concerns have been made in respect of those 11 temporary event notices to Essex Police or Environmental Health. Taking into account all of the above, the committee has resolved to grant the application as per the agreed conditions contained within the application, along with the mandatory conditions. The committee reminds all those present that if any problems arise in the future as a result of the grant of the licence, a review of the licence can be requested at any time. This concludes today's hearing, and a full decision notice will be issued in due course. Thank you all for attending. Thank you.